Once again, good to see everybody here. Hope you are having a great Sunday morning. We're going to be picking up in our study in Romans chapter 7. So if you want to turn there, and we'll be presently in verse 13. Now, last week, of course, we covered the first part of Romans chapter 7, which we found to be, or at least seems to be, the Apostle Paul kind of digging in more and unpackaging a statement that he made in chapter 6. He made the statement kind of in passing, says some things in connection to it, but doesn't really unpackage it until you get to chapter 7. And the statement that I'm talking about is in verse 14 of chapter 6, where he says, "For sin shall not be master over you, for you are not under law, but under grace." And so in chapter 7, he's showing how we're not under law. We're not under law anymore because we died with Christ. So when Christ died and we're identified with Christ in baptism, what became true of him became true of us. When he died, we died with him, and therefore we died to sin. As Romans chapter 6 talks about, our old self was crucified with him. But also, consequently, we died to the law. In Galatians chapter 4 and verse 4, it says that Jesus was born of a woman, born under the law. So as long as he was in this earthly body, on this earth, alive, he was under the Mosaic law, and he kept the law perfectly. But when he died, he was released from that law. And when we died with him, we were released from the law as well. And so we have been identified in that. A person who's died is not under law anymore. He made that point. You know, if a woman's married to a man, and as long as that man's alive, she has to be faithful to him unto death. But once he dies, she's released from that law and is free to marry another. And the Apostle Paul is very clear and says that we died to the law, but a very important point, we died to the law. Why? So that we could be married to another. So the point is not that we died to the law so that we can just live a lawless life and do whatever we want. We're married to another person that now we have a commitment with, we're in covenant with, and that we follow Jesus Christ, the one who died for us. And so now we describe our approach to God not through law, through legalistic means, not through this transactional relationship with God, but a relationship with God in which we adore him, we love him, we're devoted to him, we follow him, we're committed to him. That's the language that's used by Christ while he was here on earth, and that follows through with this kingdom life that we live now. And so we died to the law, which helped us out because we were constantly in this cycle of the law, us trying to keep the law through the strength of the flesh, and then sin coming in and using the law to even bring us into more sin. And we were just in this cycle of the commandment, the flesh, sin, death, and it was just like a spinning wheel, just going over and over and over again. But through Christ, we have our breakthrough. We have a means by which we can transcend that. We now live on a higher plane, away from that continuous cycle, and now we can directly contact God in the Holy of Holies, have a relationship with him in this new and living way in which he's written his law upon our hearts and upon our minds, and he has forgiven us of all of our sins and trespasses. We looked at that in Hebrews with the discussion of the new covenant. But now, having said all that, he's going to, and he's already been doing this, but he's going to continue this. He's going to be showing that us dying to the law doesn't mean that the law was bad. It's not that the law was like this evil thing that we had to rid ourselves of and everything like that. As we talked about last week, the law was the pure part of the formula. It was that which was good and right and holy. But what was wrong was the mixture that took place of the flesh and sin. So the law was like pure water. If you have pure water, it's good in and of itself. But you start mixing in rat poison and a bunch of other stuff into it, all of a sudden you got a deadly potion. And that's what we had with the law. The law was pure and good and lovely in and of itself. But now the flesh and sin is getting into the mix, and now something deadly is coming out. And he's going to continue that thought as we get into verse 13. So he had just said in verse 12, the law is holy, and the commandment is holy and righteous and good. And he says in verse 13, therefore, did that which is good become a cause of death for me? In other words, Paul, you're saying that the law is good, but at the same time, it became a cause of death for me, that it caused me to die. So is the law really that good? Was God good in giving us the law? Was it good for us to have the knowledge of good and evil? Is that a good thing? Well, he says it had not become a cause of death. In other words, it wasn't the root problem in and of itself. He says rather, or he says may it never be, he says rather it was sin, in order that it may be shown to be sin by working out my death through that which is good, so that through the commandment sin would become utterly sinful. All right, that's a long verse, isn't it? I don't know if it's the longest verse in the New Testament, but it's a pretty long verse. But he's going in and he's just saying that the commandment was good. The cause was not the commandment. It wasn't ultimately what was causing death. The problem was sin, and sin operating through the commandment. So kind of what was happening is you have the law came in, and we used this analogy last week, where the law is kind of like a mirror. A mirror just tells you how you look. It doesn't help you look better. It doesn't, unless it has some type of fancy gadget on it or something. Usually a plain mirror is just going to tell you how you look. And it's not going to fix you. It's just going to tell you how you look. And the law did that with sin. The law came in and it exposed sin. It said, that's sin. And it brought it out. This is what you did was sinful. This is sin acting out. But then sin kind of inverted that and used the commandment then to lead us into more sin. It enticed us by the commandment to commit more sin. You tell a child, don't push that button, what do they want to do? They want to push that button. And so the sin uses the commandment to cause you to do more sin. Then what happens? Well, the law exposes that. And then sin turns around and uses the commandment to make you sin more. And so it just becomes this compounding problem in which the law, which is good, which is that pure light, it is that accurate mirror that's reflecting our lives, it's doing its proper thing. It's that sin is manipulating things. As this mirror is showing us that, hey, your tie's on crooked, or your hair's messed up. Sin is kind of using that same mirror then to lead us into more being messed up than we were before. If you follow my analogy there. So the problem here is that the problem is just compounding upon itself. Which, if I may make a side point away from Paul a little bit here, but I would hope that he would agree with this, and I believe he does based on his writings. He would say that this whole cycle that's taking place, that was producing death. I lost my train of thought. This law and the commandment and everything was producing death in us. It was exposing us. Maybe it'll come back to me. But the main thing here is just that it's compounding upon itself, and it's making things worse and putting us more into a trap. So the problem is not with the law. The law is good. The law is pure, holy, righteous, and all those things. The problem is with us, with sin. And so we just get caught up in that. So now as we get into verse 14 and following, we're going to see the Apostle Paul get really practical. He's going to show exactly how this works in detail. Like in a person's life, this is what we experience. This is what we see. Now, a highly debatable part of this section is figuring out who the I is. Because the Apostle Paul, it's debated whether the Apostle Paul is talking about the I as far as like the Jew trying to live according to the law, trying to approach God through the law. And he's kind of just putting himself in that persona of the Jew and the law. Or is the Apostle Paul talking about a Christian who has already come to Christ, but then there's this daily struggle. I have this desire to follow God, but at the same time, I find that the flesh is kind of getting in the way of me doing that. Is he talking about a universal I that goes all the way back to the Adamic race? Is everyone Jew and Gentile, and our whole experience universally? I think based on the context, the best that I can tell, and you guys can study it for yourselves, come to your own conclusion. I will say, as far as understanding what Paul's saying, you don't really need to have this nailed down. It's just for the sake of precision. I believe the Apostle Paul is talking about a person before they come to Christ. The Apostle Paul is describing that wrestling that takes place before someone comes to the Lord. That's has a lot to do with tracing it back to when he first starts using this type of language, where his main point really is to show that we need to be broken free from the law. We need to come to Christ to get out from under the law because of this cycle, because the flesh and the law can't mix together. And so that whole main point that he's making is a point that applies to a person before they come to Christ. This is the situation before you come to Christ. You have the law and you have the flesh battling it out. And so we need to come to Christ to die to the law so that we can die to sin also, and therefore live a life according to the Spirit. Notice also in this section, there's no mention of the Holy Spirit. There's no mention of grace. Like, it's completely absent of all the things that we know are connected to being a Christian in this particular section. And he won't really get to that point until he gets to the end when he says, who will set me free from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. And so that seems to be like he's saying, okay, you who haven't come to Christ yet, this is what's happening to you. You're battling it out, trying to keep God's law through the strength of the flesh, but it's working against you. The answer is Christ. Through Christ you can break free. And then chapter 8 is living that out through the Spirit. So that's my interpretation of it. But like I said, the principles that are here and what he's describing, if we're being honest, all of us experience this. No matter where we are in life, before Christ, after Christ, anytime we are trying to approach God just merely in the strength of the flesh, and while we're walking according to the flesh, it's just going to unravel and fall apart. And we'll see why as we go through here, why that's the point. So it applies to everyone. I just think, just for the sake of precision, I think if you're interpreting it, the I that Paul's talking about is the person before they come to Christ. And the whole point, the reason why he's doing that is he's showing, and this follows through these verses, he's just showing the law is good. As you read through these verses, he says, look, I know in the inner man that the law is good. The problem's not with the law. And the fact that I'm even having this battle proves that the law is good. The problem is with the flesh that keeps driving me in the other direction. So that's his main point. But like I said, what he's saying really applies to everyone, because we all recognize the power of the flesh. And before we get into the verses, I really want us to key in on that idea. If you don't walk away from anything from this lesson, when it comes to the flesh, be afraid. Be very afraid of the flesh. We're going to see in these verses the flesh is powerful. Very powerful. It will move you to do things that you don't even want to do. It's like that big ocean wave. You're standing and I say, I want to swim over to that little reef over there. And the ocean says, no. You're going this direction. It's just this powerful wave that comes over a person that moves them in a direction they don't even want to go. So it's powerful, but then it's also destructive. Think of all the families that have been ruined, marriages that just unraveled, communities broken up, churches split, all these different things that come because of the power of the flesh. It's a destructive force. It's a powerful force. And that's why it sets up for chapter 8, where the Apostle Paul says, do not walk according to the flesh. Those who walk according to the flesh cannot please God. You have to walk by the Spirit. Through the Spirit, you can fulfill the righteous requirements of the law. So that's where we're going with this. I wanted to set that out at the front. So we get into verse 14, and we find really the foundational problem here with this whole battle, and what really causes this battle in the first place. In verse 14, he says, for we know that the law is spiritual, but I am fleshly, having been sold into bondage under sin. That first statement, if I may say, that kind of lends to what I was saying. In chapter 6, the Apostle Paul said the Christian is not under the flesh. He's not under the bondage of sin. We've been broken free from that. So this is just a short point to say that I think he's describing a person before they come to Christ. But nonetheless, he says the root problem is the law is spiritual, but I am fleshly. In other words, the law is of this nature, but I am of this nature. And the two are completely contradictory. And we talked about this before, but I want to say it again just so that it's in the forefront of our minds as we're going through these verses, that's why God said, the tree that is in the midst of the garden, you should not eat of it. Don't touch it. Don't go near it. He didn't say all that, but he said, don't eat of it. He said, because in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. Why would they die? your flesh can't handle the knowledge of good and evil. Like, you can't take that in and be okay. Why? Because the flesh isn't about good and evil. The flesh is about survival. The flesh is about looking out for number one. The flesh is about live as long as possible, self-preservation, just do whatever you got to do to survive. The flesh is all about self-gratification. Involve yourself in as much pleasure and comfort as possible. The flesh is all about self-exaltation. Get on the top of the pack. Get above everybody else so that you can get to a level of security and you can exercise your power over everybody else. That's the law of our members. That's the law of the flesh. And that's good if you're just an animal. It's good for animals. It's good for survival, right? The animal needs to have those instincts to survive. We needed those instincts to survive in a world where we're filled with, a lot of chances for us not to survive and thrive. But nonetheless, we have that innate intuition within us, that animal instinct within that can't handle law. Think about what law is. What is the knowledge of good and evil? Love your neighbor as yourself. Altruism, but laying yourself down for another person. Sometimes not preserving your life, but actually allowing yourself to die for the sake of someone else. It's about not being self-interested, but interested in the other person, seeing the other person as more valuable than yourself. It's about all these different things where we say, it's not about exalting myself, but it's about humbling myself. It's about not taking the best seat at the banquet, but the last seat. It's about the first will be last and the last shall be first. That goes in stark contrast to our animal instincts that says the total opposite. And so the law is spiritual. It transcends just what we're trying to do here on earth to survive and thrive. It's something transcendent. It's something heavenly. It's something spiritual. And it comes from God in his purity. But we are fleshly, driven to these various impulses for these purposes already described. So you can see where there would be a battle. I know this is good, but my flesh is driving me to do that. And this is the tension that he's going to bring out as we continue through these verses. He says, having been sold into bondage under sin. In verse 15, for what I am working out, I do not understand. For I am not practicing what I would like to do, but I'm doing the very thing that I hate. So he says, for what I'm working out, I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense to me. How can I want to do this, but always do that? How can I say God's law is good? Laying my life down for others. We have heroes in our stories and these epics where people lay down their lives. We're like, yeah, that's great. That's the way life should be. You should sacrifice yourself for others. You should love others with all your heart. You should be doing this, that, and the other. And then we go out in life and we go right back to ourselves, living for ourselves selfishly, all these different things. In our hearts, we know that it's generous to give and it's good to give of our means to other people for their benefit and to further them along in life and help them when they're disadvantaged and things like that. But then we end up just hoarding things for ourselves and living for ourselves with a self-interest that goes contrary to that. And we look at ourselves and we say, well, I don't understand what's going on here. I know what I should be doing, and I even want to do that. Why am I not doing what I want to do? It's kind of like, well, I want to go to Fiesta, Texas today, but somehow I ended up in the Gulf of Mexico. It's like, how did this happen? This is not what I wanted to do in the first place. Why do I keep ending up over there? And that's the struggle. That's why when you go to a kid and say, why did you hit your sister? I don't know. They really don't know. A lot of the times they're just like, I don't know. I just did it. I can't explain why I did it. I know I probably shouldn't have done it, but I just did it. And that's how we do day in and day out. We do things that we wouldn't want to do. We don't want to do it. We actually hate those things. But we still find ourselves doing it like a puppet on a string. Like those monkeys that just beat the drums just constantly. It's like a constant thing where we're just like, I don't know why this is happening. He's saying, but that very experience shows that the law is good. In verse 16, he says, but if I do the very thing I do not want, I agree with the law that it is good. All right, so he's saying if I do something I don't want to do, the very fact that I don't want to do it shows that the law is good. Otherwise, it would be like, well, if the law wasn't good, then I wouldn't be doing something I don't want to do. I'd be doing something I do want to do, which is contrary to God's law. But the fact that in our heart of hearts we know that this is the way I should be living, I know I should be a better father, I know I should be a faithful husband, I know I should be a better co-worker, I know I should be a better citizen of this nation, I know I should be all these things. I know that the law is good. The fact that I want to do that shows that the law is good, but my actual experience shows the opposite, or doesn't show the opposite, but actually reinforces that, because you can now see the stark contrast of this is where I ended up and that's where I wanted to be. And so it really just reveals all the more just how good the law is. The fact that even though our flesh wants us to do that, we still see the law as good. The whole time we're doing this, we still see the law as the standard, as the ideal. And we could go all into objective morality and stuff like that. I almost did that, but I think it'd get us too off track. But God's law is objective. It is universal, and we can all see that. And we know what the standard is, whether we have a Bible in our laps or it's just our conscience in our heart. We know what we should be doing, but we don't do it. He says in verse 18, "For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. For the willing is present in me, but the working out of the good is not." So, if there was something good in me, I could use that good to fulfill God's law. But the fact that I want to do what's right, that the willing is present with me, but the working out of the good is not, shows that there's something wrong, there's something broken, there's an evil in residence with me, abiding with me, that's keeping me from keeping that law. And I think that evil he's talking about is the law of our members. It's that fleshly side of us that is bent towards our own desires and a selfish approach to life. He says in verse 19, "For the good that I want, I do not do, but I practice the very evil that I do not want." Notice in that verse, there's good and evil. There's a good that I should do, and then there's the evil that I should not do. The knowledge of good and evil. I know the knowledge of good and evil. I know the good I should do. I know the evil that I should not do, but what I tend to do is inverse that. And I don't do the good that I know is good, and I actually do the evil that I know I shouldn't do. So he's showing that the flesh, again, is like this wave in the ocean that I want to go to that high spot over there. I want to go to that plateau. I want to go to that higher level, but the wave just washes me back and washes me back. It's a dreadful force that drives us into this destructive experience of death. In verse 20, but if I am doing the very thing I do not want, I am no longer the one working it out, but sin which dwells in me. All right, so the idea there is that the way Paul's kind of describing this is you have the law of God on this side, and then you have sin on this side. And I is in the eye of the storm. I'm in the center of this. I know I should be going this way, observing God's law, but sin is coming in. This evil that's resident in me, this fleshly desires, these animal instincts that are within me are driving me away from what I want to do. And so what Apostle Paul's saying is that it's not I that's in. In other words, it's not that I think God's law is trash and that God's law is no good and that, I just want to do that. He's saying the I that's in the middle wants to do what's right. It's not sinning. It wants what's good. It has that desire, but the flesh is coming in and pulling him over to that side. And so he's saying it's sin that's dwelling in me that's pulling me in the wrong direction. It's not that I'm willingly doing it, because I know what the ideal is. I know what is objectively good. I just can't seem to muster up the strength to fulfill it. See how powerful the flesh is. We want to go back to that point. See how dangerous the flesh is. If we live according to the flesh, this will be our experience. Sin takes you further than you want to go. It promises a lot of things, but it doesn't fulfill what it promises. In verse 21, I find then the principle that in me evil is present. I think there was a video game out, Resident Evil, I think way back in the day. I don't know if it's still around, but resident evil. In other words, there's an evil that is resident. There's an evil that is present in me who wants to do good. I know what's good is, the cartoons with the devil on your shoulder. Hey, Mac, you need to go over there and do that. It's that kind of thing. It's like, except for it's more than just a voice. It's actually a force that's pulling you. It's more than just a voice. It's something that is dragging you, that's taking you by the scruff of the neck and pulling you in the direction you don't want to go. In verse 22, for I joyfully concur with the law of God in the inner man. In other words, the law is good. This is the point he keeps coming back to. In my heart of hearts, in the inner man, I know the law is good. The problem is not with the law. This is the point he keeps coming back to. I know the law is good. I concur with that. I agree with that. I'm good with that. But, verse 23, I see a different law in my members. That law within me that says, do what's best for yourself. Look out for number one. Exalt yourself. Please yourself. Find comfort for yourself. Don't live for others. Don't live for God. Live for self. That law in my members is waging war against the law of my mind and making me captive to the law of sin which is in my members. So notice the warlike language that he's talking about here. It's like, okay, he says, here I am. I'm wanting to serve God. I know that God's law is good, whether I'm getting that from my conscience or from the scriptures or both. I know his law is good, but then there's this invading army that is coming in, this evil that's coming in and taking over the land and taking me captive. It's like an invading army that comes in and says, now you're going to serve us. Now you are, your allegiance is towards sin, and takes you as captive, brings you under bondage, and you become exiled into this relationship with sin, where you're constantly bound, you can't get out, you're trapped, you don't know what to do. Because no matter how much you look to what is good, you just keep falling in the mud. You just get in the muck, and you can't seem to break free. Your legs are trapped, you're trying to move forward, but you're sluggish, you're falling down, and you just cry out, verse 24, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from the body of this death? You come to the point where you come to the end of yourself. It's like, I give up. There's nothing I can do. Who's going to free me from this? I'm under captivity. I'm under the bondage of sin. This invading army, this evil that's resident within me, these desires that I have within me, connected to the flesh, is subjecting me and oppressing me. And I don't see a way out. It's like I'm bound. I'm imprisoned, and there's no way to break free. Who's gonna set me free from this experience? Who's gonna save me? Who's gonna get me out of this cycle of death and sin and the flesh? Is there an answer? Is there anyone in the universe, in all existence, who's more powerful than our flesh, as powerful as it is? Is there one in heaven who shakes the earth and its foundations tremble? The one who sets a seal upon the stars? The one whose voice shakes the heavens? The one who says for the sun not to shine, but sets a seal on the stars? The one who alone stretches out the heavens, who tramples upon the waves of the sea? The one who's powerful further than we can even imagine, greater than we can ever imagine. Is there anyone powerful enough to overcome this flesh? Is there anyone who can free me from exile, spiritual exile? Well, the good news is he answers his own question in verse 25. Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. Jesus is the answer. Just like they told you in Bible class, Jesus is always the answer. And he's the answer here. Who will set us free? Who's the one who led captivity captive and gave gifts to men? Who's the one who releases us from this dreadful cycle of sin and the flesh? Jesus Christ our Lord. He's the one powerful enough to do it. He's the one strong enough to do it. And ironically enough, he did it through dying. He did it through dying on a cross. Not through sending in the army, not by coming in on a white horse, but riding in on a donkey to save us and to rescue us. Then he has this concluding statement. He says, so then, on the one hand, I myself with my mind am serving the law of God, but on the other, with my flesh, the law of sin. Basically concluding everything that he says. So see that the law is good. In my mind, I know it's good. In my mind, I'm serving the law, but yet in my body, I'm still, or the flesh, the law of sin is still evident and moving me in the wrong direction. So I apologize for keep using this analogy, but it's kind of like, well, I'm looking for that plateau. The waves are coming against me and driving me in the other direction. But the very fact that my mind recognizes that that plateau or that high place is where I want to go shows that that high place is a good place to be, if that makes sense. And that's what the Apostle Paul is saying. The fact that I'm even having this battle, the fact that I'm even having this conflict, just all the more reaffirms that God's law is good, that it is perfect, it is good, it is holy. But it's just the flesh, that old flesh that keeps dragging us down, moving us in the wrong direction, puts us in the Gulf of Mexico when we want to be, or I guess it's the Gulf of America now, the Gulf of America when we want to be at Six Flags. So I want us to leave with that tension this week. And I'm hoping every single one of you will be able to come back, because if we just stop here, it's like, oh, well, I can't live according to the flesh, now what do? Well, chapter 8 is going to tell us that the way that the Lord has brought us deliverance is by introducing to us a new law. So we talked about the law of Moses, we talked about the law of the conscience, we talked about the law of sin, the law of our members. But he's going to bring in the law of the spirit of life, a new principle by which we can live, a new way to approach God, and a new way to overcome sin. The Christian life isn't just about, well, I just don't do what I want to do anymore. It's all about introducing this new way, this new perspective, this new approach to life and approach to God and everything else. So we'll unpackage that next week. But for now, we'll just say, for anyone who's here and this resonated with you perhaps. You look on your life and you say, I don't know why I did the things that I did. I just kept doing the wrong things. I kept hurting the people I love. I kept sticking my foot in my mouth. I kept being prideful even when I knew I should be humble. I realize that something's broke within me, that there's something within me that keeps driving me in the wrong direction. Let me just leave you with a warning. If you allow that to keep going, who knows where you'll end up, just in this life. But more importantly, where will you end up in eternity? If you continue to just allow the flesh to rule, you don't submit yourself to God, don't give yourself to Christ, he will break you free from the law so that you can have this new founded relationship with him, in which you're no longer on law but on grace. You're under his favor. He will help you. He will come alongside of you to bring you through and have victory, and to be released from this constant cycle of sin, death, condemnation, death, all these things. So if you want to be free today, come to Jesus. He's powerful enough. He's willing enough. He'll pull you out of that, and he'll make you a new person. A person that you can sleep with at night, that you can be happy with when you go to bed. If you would like that this morning, please come forward as we stand and sing the song that JT has prepared.